Good evening and welcome to the Summer Reading Assignment Campus Read session for prompt number 2, hosted by the Honors College at West Virginia University. I'm Dr. Ashley Watts, Program Director of the Honors College First Year Experience. We are excited to welcome you to our community of learners. Joining us today is Dr. Susan Lance, Director of the Campus Read and Teaching Associate Professor in the Chambers College of Business and Economics. We are using the Zoom webinar platform today. If you have issues with audio or video, be sure to check your personal Zoom settings and your computer's volume controls. If live captioning has been requested, it can be viewed by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen. If live captioning was not requested, a captioned version of this recording will be available on the Honors website. And now let's begin our discussion. So welcome everybody. With that, I would like to turn things over to Dr. Lance.
Hi. So I am Susan Jennings Lance, and I am the director of the Campus Read at West Virginia University, but I also am a teacher. I teach business communication for the Chambers College of Business and Economics. So I'd like to say hello to everybody. A couple people I think who joined us yesterday might be on here. So hi to those people. Good to see you again. So this beginning part might be a little bit of a repeat, but the second part will not be. So what's the point of this Campus Read thing? Why do we have a Campus Read? Why are we making you do stuff? Well, a lot of colleges across the country, tons of them, hundreds of them actually, have what we call a common read, that all the freshmen have to read the same book, and then they are supposed to sit around and talk about the book and hold hands and sing Kumbaya and become better people because they've read the book or some such. And so we started to do that a few years ago at West Virginia University, but we picked some really good books early on. And after a while, what we began to realize is that there were people who were interested in the common read that we had for our freshmen who weren't freshmen. We had faculty and staff who were interested. We had graduate students who were interested. One year, the law school got all worked up about it. So we decided to change it, and we have what we call a campus read. And the idea is that we're going to have an experience that everybody on the campus can share with. Now, I'm going to share with you my screen. And so first of all, we talk about why, of course, we have a campus read. Specifically, we started out so we could introduce our new freshmen to the intellectual climate on campus. We started out to facilitate discussion, to stimulate curiosity, and provide a platform for deeper learning across disciplines. We have one because we want to connect and acclimate students to their new environment and have a common intellectual experience. But not just our freshmen. We want everyone to have this common intellectual experience because the books that we choose tend to be books that are noted for their literary level. Okay, they're well written. They tackle interesting ideas and thought-provoking things. And so we want everyone to have the opportunity to discuss some of this stuff. And finally, we wanted to further WVU's commitment to diverse voices and help our students find their own diverse voices, because research has shown that students who really understand their own narrative tend to be better students. Who knew? If you know who you are, you tend to be a better student. But I'll also say that one of the ways that we figure out who we are is to examine the lives or the ideas of other people. And that is the whole basis of humanitarian thought, right there in a nutshell. You don't even have to take philosophy class now. You've had me. All right, so our campus read this year, as you probably already are very much aware, is Transcendent Kingdom by a woman named Ya Gyasi. And I'm assuming you have either finished it or are rapidly trying to get through it. We choose the book by having a group of faculty and staff who get together. The faculty and staff actually get together over the summer, and they come up with a long list of books, and then they whittle that down to a short list of books. And that short list of books is then presented to an honors class that we have. We have a group of 10 or 12 honors students who, for credit, take a class with me where they look at the 5 books on the short list and they help us select the one that they think that students would enjoy the most and they think that the students would get the most out of. And this year they chose the book Transcendent Kingdom by Yajasi. All right, so many themes in this book, as you're well aware. There's quite the discussion of opioid abuse. And of course, our friends over in public health got all excited about that because they talk about opioid abuse an awful lot. But not just our friends in public health. Our friends in the journalism school have been writing about opioid abuse in Appalachia. And so a lot of different people have been looking at this from a lot of different angles, the people in sociology too. We've been looking at Black immigration to the United States because Gifty in this book is African American, but her ancestors were not necessarily slaves. Her ancestors were actually people who lived in Ghana, and her parents are the ones who immigrated to the United States. Nobody was enslaved here, or at least they weren't in the United States. We look at mental illness within the family because I think everyone we know has somebody in the family who has suffered. And we used to not talk about these things, but we're starting to a lot more. So that's another theme we're talking about. Obviously, we're talking about neuroscience. We're talking about sports psychology. We're talking about the isolation that happens in graduate school. We're talking about reconciling science and spirituality because, as you know, in this book, we talk about science and spirituality a lot. Religion, God, science, like what is the truth? Can both of those exist? Those are questions that people have been asking for all of humankind, and we will continue to ask, and we'll continue to explore. So we'll be talking about that a lot this year. We'll be talking about the first generation experience, and we will also be talking about people who have suffered adverse childhood events, as Gifty has in here. Now, don't copy this down because some of these dates are a moving target, but I just wanted to show you the different kind of events that we have coming up this fall. We're going to be doing a Narcan training sponsored by the Campus Read. We're going to have an exhibit in Stewart Hall and have an opening reception in the Stewart Hall Gallery that you can join us for that is inspired by the Campus Read. We're going to have our friends from the Cruise Center talk about mental illness and trauma within the family. We're going to do a Stewart Hall Gallery walkthrough where we actually explain how you put together a museum exhibit. We're going to hopefully have Yajasi here on campus with us. We're still working through that, but there's a very good chance that we'll be seeing her in person on campus. And finally, we will be putting together a panel of journalists who've written about opioid abuse. Now, I want to back up just a little bit here, and I want to talk about some of the quotations from the book. So I'd like everybody viewing from home to take a list of these 5 bookmarks. These bookmarks were actually created using quotations from the book Transcendent Kingdom. So I would like for everybody to look at these bookmarks and pick out one that you think is interesting, that you think makes sense to you. It speaks to you somehow. Okay. So I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to read through those, and then I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about them. All right. So be prepared to say why you think it's interesting. Okay. So I'm wondering if somebody could tell us which one of these bookmarks you found interesting. The way that I really hope that will join us is by unmuting yourself and just saying, hey, this is the bookmark I thought was interesting. take yourself off of mute. Now, if you don't want to do that, you can certainly always put something in chat as well. But hopefully we'll get some people to actually talk tonight on the microphone. All right.
Hey, so I found the first one interesting. I actually marked it in my own book when I saw it because I really, really liked that like quotation of, you don't know what questions to ask, but when you do, you get more questions and you get more time to discover new things. And I really like to learn about things that I don't know. So I like finding that one question that you don't know when to ask or who to ask, and then you finally find that person, or you finally find that question, and bam, you get a bunch of knowledge, and you get to have like a good discussion about something and find more questions and then keep talking about it.
Yeah, it's like finding buried treasure or something, isn't it?
Yes.
And I apologize. My dog is back here shaking and rattling and carrying on because he likes to join in when I'm on a Zoom meeting. But yeah, it's I think that is one of the reasons I got a PhD, because when I started studying one thing, then I had more questions, and then I started studying something else, and then it led to something else, and before I knew it, I was knee deep in the whole thing. So Amelia, I'm glad to hear that one really spoke to you. I think that that's my favorite quote. That's the one I picked when we were putting the quotes together. So yay. Did anybody else find a good quote?
Hi, I would say that probably the third quote stuck out to me the most about what's the point of all this? I mean, everybody at some point starts to think, what's the point of all this? And then even if you can't decide between, I don't know, or maybe it's nothing, the first part of the quote talks about, if I were an animal or something, I wouldn't have to worry about this. But since we're humans, we get to think about this, we get to figure out our purpose. And whether we're going to go down spirituality or we're going to go down the science path, it's either, I don't know, try to figure it out, or can you be content with nothing?
Yeah, and it's a question that doesn't go away. I mean, you ask it all your life. You ask it when you're, a teenager, you ask it when you're a young adult. And for many people, spirituality helps guide through that. For many people, science is a guide through that. For other people, the humanities are a guide. For a lot of people, it's more than one thing. It can be spirituality, and it can be the humanities, or it can be science, or it can be rational thought, or it can be life experiences. They don't have to be mutually exclusive, right? So I, like you, I thought that was a great passage as well. And boy, we've all asked that question, right? That existential question. Great. Thank you very much, Chloe and Amelia. Who else found one that they thought was intriguing? Dr. Watts, what did you think was interesting?
The last one really stands out to me. 1/10 of a centimeter is all that stood between pretty good and unimaginable sorrow. How differently could Gifty and her family's life look like now if, her brother had never, overdosed and even had the accident, right, when he was playing ball. Like, if that accident had never occurred, how different would his life look like? And then subsequently his family's life too, if none of that would have ever happened.
Exactly. Like all the near misses we have in our lives, right?
Yeah.
Did anyone choose, like many Americans, I knew very little about the rest of the world? You can also put something in chat if you'd like. Well, I find that one kind of intriguing myself because, I spend a lot of time going on faculty-led study abroad with students because I feel like we need to know about the rest of the world. And I feel like I didn't get to know enough about the rest of the world until I was an older adult. And so I like to help our students experience that too in one way or another. And I work hard to make sure that we have affordable faculty-led study abroads available to our students. So that might be something people would be interested in exploring while they're in college. What about the one that says we should have seen it coming, but we didn't see what we didn't want to see? Like, I should have seen it coming that my dog wants out while I have the door closed and I'm in this Zoom meeting. But Dr. Watts, what should we have seen coming besides that?
Yeah, so I really like this one as well. We should have seen it coming, but we didn't see what we didn't want to see. And I think a lot of times that can apply to our personal lives, or even when we have to almost like face ourselves, like something that we don't like about ourselves or something that someone else points out to us. It's hard to look at something if you really don't want it to be there.
And I mean, I can think of so many instances. I mean, obviously in Transcendent Kingdom, Gifty and her mother should have seen what was happening coming, but they just didn't want to see it.
Mhm.
And then somebody just posted that they find that interesting because Linju, it reminded me of the idea of selective exposure, which bars us from avoiding possible tragedies. Yeah, absolutely, Lejeune. I mean, we all want to avoid tragedies, and sometimes just not thinking about it helps. And sometimes we have to do that for our mental state, right? I mean, there are times that we just have to do that. But it's also not helpful when it finally hits, right? So thank you, Lejeune. And I always think too of COVID when I think of this one, simply because about 25 years ago, I was on a committee at West Virginia University about what we were going to do if the avian flu hit the United States. And we went to all these meetings. Were you around then, Ashley, when they kept taking us, Dr. Watts, when they kept telling us to get ready?
Yes, I think I was. Yes.
What I remember the most was being in a meeting in the
Mhm.
president's office.
Mhm.
And they said, well, no, it wasn't 25 years ago because my kids had already been born, but I would say we're talking 16, 17 years ago.
Mhm.
And anyway, they said things like, well, what are you going to do if the avian flu hits badly, you know? And we said, well, we'll have to feed the kids in the residence halls. And they said, no, you won't. You'll send all the kids in the residence halls home. And I remember thinking, what? We'll send them home and you'll stay in your house for however long it takes for us to figure out a way to stop it. And I thought, what? No way, we won't do that. And they also said it's not a matter of if this flu hits, it's a matter of when. There will be a pandemic in our lifetime. And I thought, yeah, right, whatever. Well, color me wrong. So we, you know, in a way, I feel like we've always known it for the last 20 years that this could have happened, and everybody kind of just pretended it wasn't happening, and then it finally happened. So, all right. Now I would also like to point out, if you really enjoyed the book, the Transcendent Kingdom, that Ya Gyasi wrote another book called Homegoing that came out before Transcendent Kingdom came out. It's not about the same people. It's not like a prequel or a sequel, but it's a really interesting book as well. And if you liked Homegoing, or if you like Transcendent Kingdom, I would recommend that book. And also, because I am a narcissist, I guess, or I have some narcissistic tendencies, wanted you to see a picture of me, because I was at a conference several years ago and I got to meet Ya Gyasi. So there I am with Ya Gyasi and Homegoing. Woo! Go, Dr. Lance. All right. So I want to know what you all thought of the book. What were your thoughts about the book? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Some people think it's too dark. Some people thought it was too sad. Some people really thought it was interesting. So I'm really curious to find out what you thought. Feel free to jump on the meeting chat and tell us what you thought, or unmute yourself and tell us.
Hi, I would probably say that it was a little bit sadder than I would expect a summer read. You know what I mean? Like at the end of summer, you want to read like fun vacation books and stuff. But it was definitely interesting you kind of felt bad because at the beginning you hear about everything that happens. Like you hear that the father's not in the picture, you hear about the overdose, the mom that isn't really there for her all the time. So you know that going into it, but then you get closer to Gifty the whole time and you just know that it's gonna get worse kind of as it goes. And you already know what's gonna happen, so you feel bad for the future Gifty kind of as
Yeah.
it's going on because you know what's happening.
So even though, we go back to that quote about we should have seen it coming, but we didn't, you could see it coming in the book, you the reader. Yeah. Yeah. I'm right, it is sad. Or you're right, it is sad. It is kind of dark. Other students, what did you think? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Phoenix?
I
Go ahead, Caitlin.
also, hello, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I also agree that it was really sad and you could see it coming. And it really, like, you knew about, especially the overdose, you knew it was coming, but it really just gutted me to watch the process, watch the decline of like her emotions dealing with that. It was so sad. I couldn't handle it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm curious, Chloe and Caitlin, you both thought it was really sad. Did you find it engaging? Did you find it like something you wanted to keep reading, or was it a trial to get through?
Oh, I definitely found it interesting. Like, I mean, it was sad, but just like any book, you get to experience the more emotions that the narrator was experiencing. I was really engaged, especially the second half of the book. I was like, is her mom gonna be okay? Is she gonna figure it out? Is she gonna start having more relationships with people? Like what's all gonna happen? So I was definitely engaged.
I completely agree.
So even though it was sad, you were definitely wanted to turn the page and find out what happened next.
Yeah, it was kind of like a car crash where you can't look away, but you kind of want to.
Some days my life is like that, so I get it. Oh, that's good to know. Phoenix says that he personally liked the book going into it. He didn't think he would, but it turned out to be something that was very easy to relate to, and it allowed me to think more about the world around me and the consequences of every action that myself and others take. Excellent. Thank you, Caitlin and Chloe and Phoenix. Who else? Did anybody just find it very difficult to get through?
I personally didn't like the book because I thought going in after hearing what it was about that it would be interesting, but personally I felt it kind of lulled in some spots, especially when she was just in the lab and she was just like, I'm staring at this mouse and contemplating life. I feel like one of those scenes would have been good enough, but she did it multiple times throughout the book, and I just felt like those scenes were either I get why they were there, but I also felt they were unnecessary. Like I understand what the symbolism of it all was, but at the same time, it's just didn't click in for me personally.
That's fine.
Yeah, I also felt like it was a book that has been done before. Like it's a story you all know, which I mean, I guess necessarily not everyone would know. But for me, I feel like it's something I have read before. It is something that people have covered before. So it didn't feel new to me. And so I struggled a little bit getting through it.
Excellent. Good to know that. Good to know. I want you all to take the class this fall to help us pick the next campus read. All four of those of you who've spoken, I really want this feedback when we're picking the next one, So
Dr. Lance, we have another remark in the chat here. I'll just go ahead and read it aloud. I don't really like the book because of Geisy's writing style. It confused me a lot when she kept switching between the past and the present. Had a hard time trying to organize that timeline. It's a good point.
Yeah. So the kind of disruption of timeline can be a bit problematic. And that's interesting to note. The book that we read last year was called Interior Chinatown, and it was written in the style of a movie script. So everything was third person. And a few students found that to be a little bit difficult to kind of get through because of the I don't want to say the style, but the way it was set up. And the other people thought it was really great. It was like, hard to kind of pick out the best way to go. But I really encourage you to join us as we choose the campus read for next year, because this is the kind of feedback we like to know. Okay. All right. Well, a couple of things before we move on to talk about the topic at hand. One of them is, if you have your phone handy, if you could follow me on Instagram. I make a lot of announcements, not just about the campus read, but about things that faculty-led study abroad and other things that I'm involved in. And it would be helpful if you would follow me on Instagram. So this is Dr. Lance Announces. And I would also like you, if you wouldn't mind, to look up the Friends of the Campus Read newsletter, and you use QR code to that and put in your name and email address. You will get our newsletter that will tell you what's going on with the campus read at any given time, and as we go forward too. All right. So having said that, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Watts, and we're going to talk some more about the prompt for tonight. Dr. Watts, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Lance. So for this evening, we are going to focus on the second prompt of the summer reading assignment. So that's prompt 2, and I'm just going to read it aloud here. And again, we want to hear your thoughts about this. So for prompt 2, it states, a common theme in the book was Gifty's struggle to separate the beliefs she grew up with versus what she believes now. Gifty states, I used to see the world through a God lens, and when that lens clouded, I turned to science. Both became, for me, valuable ways of seeing, but ultimately both have failed to fully satisfy in their aim, to make clear, to make meaning. Is there anything you believed when you were younger that you don't believe in anymore, or you simply aren't sure about, like Gifty's struggle with religion? Is there anything you didn't believe that you believe now? And then we ask, please relate your response to quotes or experiences that happened in Transcendent Kingdom. So maybe for some of you, you have decided to actually write about this quote for your essay. And maybe for some of you, you're still contemplating which prompt you would like to write about. But in either case, what is it about this prompt that really stands out to you? And feel free to type in the chat or unmute yourself.
For me, the reason I kind of fixated on this prompt was I relate a lot to Gifty as a character. Like she has immigrant parents. I have an immigrant father. She's had like opioid abuse in the family, and I've had that too, and like all this different stuff. And when I was younger, I actually from that immigrant side of like Mexican Roman Catholicism, I grew up with that religion, and later on I slowly started to fade out of it because I realized how like closed-minded, like thought wise it was. And so when I saw like, hey, something you used to believe in that you don't anymore or aren't sure about, I'm like in that aspect of like headspace of like what do I believe now? Like, is it something that I truly believe, or is it something that was forced onto me as a child that I'm just like trying to come to terms with?
Yeah,
I'm curious, what did you think of the end where Gifty, have you finished it yet?
I am like 3 chapters from finishing it.
Okay, never mind. Forget I asked that. I'm interested to hear what you think of the ending, though. At some point, just pop me an email and let me know. Based on what you just said, I'm curious.
Gotcha.
You don't have to pop me an email. Like, I just know your name's Amelia. I'll never find you. There are a million freshmen, but I am really interested. Did anybody else? I mean, what are some other thoughts about this? Lejean says he enjoys her personal growth reflected by the changes in her beliefs. And Natalie says, I feel like the idea of losing belief in something is a subject that was easy for me to grasp and write about. Maybe it was the idea that I also grew up religious, and as soon as I gained independence, questioned my religion, and then started questioning all the other things that my life had been made of. But it was easy to relate to, like I had said before.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, Phoenix, about what you think happened at the end. I mean, like I'm just curious about, did you like the ending? Did you not like the ending? And since not everybody's finished with it, you can tell me at a later time, but and it's interesting. A lot of students will come to us at this point and start questioning their religion.
Mhm.
And then a lot of students who aren't religious will find a religion at this stage in their life. I've had a couple of students who said, I wasn't really raised in a religious household, and then I I came to college and I met, some people, and suddenly I was kind of taken with the ideas of this particular group, which I always think is just interesting that it seems to be a period of our life where it swirls around our head a lot. And I can certainly remember a lot of discussions in my dorm rooms about religion with my roommate and my friends and that sort of thing when I was in college. Phoenix personally liked the ending. He thought it was a good resolution, even though it wasn't something you could necessarily relate to. So you felt like it worked for the book, but it didn't necessarily reflect where you are, which is fine. But it made sense to you, so that's cool. Other folks?
I think that, like, in some form, we can all kind of relate to, believing something when we were younger, and then later on in life, changing our beliefs, or even just becoming more educated about something, which then kind of manipulates our current beliefs. Like, I think, you know, everyone's, more innocent, and people or adults, will tell you less about something because you're a child. So I think that can definitely play a role in your beliefs changing later in life. But, like, me personally, like, I grew up going to church and, religious my whole life, but it wasn't until, like, recently when I decided to actually delve into it that I became much stronger in my faith, because I feel like as a child I was just kind of, floating about, hearing about it, being told about it, but not really understanding it. So it kind of took me going into it myself and actually exploring through, religious texts, and just making sense of it all. That I think it took that for me to actually, not only be completely on board with it, but also be active in it, I think is what I would call it.
Yeah, and Carter, that's funny. I just had a discussion with a really good friend of mine today who is very active in his faith. And he was talking about his father, who, would be like 80 years old now. The reason that he had joined a church was that a missionary came and played basketball with him. And the missionary kind of converted everybody who was playing basketball. And I said, well, that's an interesting way to convert people and to spread the word. And he said, yeah, but that particular type of conversion has come under a lot of criticism, because then, like, are you getting kids who are so young, they're like 14 or 15 years old, they don't really know what they're doing. Are they really converting, or are they just, joining in with their friends, and they won't really know? And I do think that you make a good point, Carter, that sometimes you have to kind of get older and start questioning what you believe to become stronger in what you believe. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And like you were just saying, I do think it's really, like, it's hard to, draw a line or to really have an answer to it of, converting someone to a religion or educating them about it, and, like, how much can you do in a single react or interaction, and, like, how much of a
Yeah.
course can you set them on to be, on the same course you're on now, or where you want them to be with it. Like you were just saying, you can tell people about it and things, but, like, it really takes them, going full deep in it to actually fully grasp, what you're trying to tell them and get them completely on board. So I do think it's definitely difficult.
And think about, in a lot of religions, there is like a coming of age ceremony. I mean, like, I was raised Catholic, and at some point I was confirmed, and that was the coming of age. Like, you're an adult now in the Catholic Church, you know what's happening, you're making a very conscious decision. I know my friends who are Jewish, many have been bar mitzvahed or bat mitzvahed, and it's the same idea. You've studied, you understand what's going on here. This isn't just I'm whatever religion because my parents are. And I think that the same holds true in many other faiths. I think that is the case in the Islamic faith. I think that all of our kind of different cultural spiritual practices kind of recognize the fact that as an adult you have to make a conscious decision. You can't just kind of float into it. Look at me getting all spiritual. I'm going to have to go hang out with my friends who teach religious studies now. By the way, we're not trying to convert anybody because, we all come from different backgrounds. We all come from different ideas. Some people really do not have a spiritual background and are not interested in having one. Some people like to think about it and study it, but aren't necessarily subscribed to one area. So we're not suggesting you should be religious. We're not suggesting you shouldn't be religious. We're not suggesting you should stop believing whatever you believe. But we are recognizing the fact that as young people, you're kind of at the stage where, and by young people, I mean like young adults, you're at the stage where you get to make decisions and you get to question. And that's what's happening to Gifty, but it sounds like that's what has happened in many of your lives and has had different results.
Dr. Lance, I want to piggyback on that just a little bit because I think it was Natalie who put in the chat, like coming from a background where there was religion and science. I think the thing about prompt 2 that really stands out to your point that you were just making is, that statement that Gifty makes there. She saw the world through a God lens and then a science lens, like it has to be one or the other. And I think to your point, we as young adults, you do get to that point in your life where you can even question that, like, why do some things just have to be one or another? It doesn't really even have to be that way, does it? Right? And just to think about things like that as well. So this prompt really stood out to me when it came to the themes in the book where it was religion kind of versus science and then back and forth between the two.
I missed that one totally. So thank you for catching Natalie there. Hi, Natalie. Carl Boyce found this prompt interesting because I can relate to Gifty in questioning my belief and even the phases she went through, like going from believing to not believing to being on the fence, because neither science or religion by itself can answer the bigger questions of the universe. So I have a PhD in English, right? And so one of the things that I love to say is one of the first few lines in Hamlet is when Hamlet says, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophies, Horatio. I love that saying because, I mean, what he's saying is there's more than we can understand going on. It's bigger than us. It isn't, our little minds can't grasp it all. And whether you are somebody who sees things through the God lens, or you see things through the science lens, or you see it through neither lens, you kind of have to agree on that. All right, then. So did you all have questions about the assignment per se, about the paper you have to write, the thing that you have to do?
I was wondering, I know obviously that there's like guidelines on like the structure of the paper, like the font and the size. But other than that, do you have like specific guidelines for how you want the paper to be written?
Natalie, thank you for your question. I I'm not sure if you were able to click on the rubric. There's two different rubrics. There's a rubric for prompts 1 through 3, and then there's a different rubric for that last prompt, which is like the TikTok digital narrative prompt. If you haven't had a chance to click on either of those rubrics yet, go ahead and do so. That will give you more information about kind of what to include within the essay. So for example, how many quotes or how many times should you kind of relate whatever it is that you're talking about within your prompt to the book itself. But other than that, you know, it should be, the word count will end up, it'll be around 4 pages long, 12-point font, Times New Roman, double space. Just make sure your name's at the top with the prompt that you wrote about if you do end up choosing prompts 1 through 3. So other than pointing to the rubric, the how to write the paper is pretty straightforward. And did that help answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Natalie. Any other questions we can help you with about the essay? Okay, I have a question regarding the prompt. I noticed there are 2 questions asked in the prompt. Am I supposed to have 2 beliefs discussed in my answer? Ooh, that's a good clarifying question. Thank you for that. So is there anything you believed when you were younger that you don't believe in anymore, or you simply aren't sure about? Right, so you could take that one and just respond to that. Or is there anything that you didn't believe that you believe now? If that question speaks to you, then you can answer just that one. If both of them speak to you, feel free to write about both, right? But you can just pick one or the other if you're more, you know, if one speaks to you more so. That's a great clarifying question though. Thank you for that. What else can we help you all with?
So about the like, if there's is there anything you didn't believe that you believe now? Could it be something that you like learned over time, like you weren't aware of it as you were a kid, but now you've come and grown into that belief?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example to answer that particular question. Mhm. Yeah. Thanks, Amelia. Anything else we can answer for you? Okay. So I'll move on to the next slide here. And Dr. Lance, do you want to talk about your class?
Sure. So I said earlier, I'd love to have many of you take our Honors 219 Future Campus Reads class. It will be on Tuesdays from 2:30 to 3:20 at Ogleby Hall. It will be worth 1 honors credit. And basically, we're going to take the 5 books on the short list and read them and talk about them. It's a lot of fun if you like to read. It's a lot of fun if you like to talk about books, find out about new books. And it's just a cool class. So if those are things you like to do, we'd love to have you. Again, it is 2:30 to 3:20 on Tuesdays, and you just need to sign up. Ashley, do they need to talk to their advisor, or can they just do it? Or
so I believe that for first year students, there will be an advising hold on your account. So you will likely need to talk to your advisor to adjust your schedule. But if you're interested in taking that class this fall, please go ahead and reach out to your advisor and just let them know that you want to add this class, and they can help you get your schedule adjusted.
And we can do that up until like even the first week of classes, throughout the first week of classes, because the first day that this class meets is like during the second week. It was like the Tuesday of the second week. So you
Mhm.
have some time to add it, and
Mhm.
love to have you. All right.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. If there aren't any more questions.
I think Lejeune has a question.
Okay, I see it here. Do I need to cite generalizations I make in my own words about gifties experiences? Dr. Lance, I'm going to throw that one over to you as the English person.
Okay, so if it's a direct quote, you need to use quotation marks and say, as it says in the book, comma, quotation mark, blah, 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 blah. If you were just paraphrasing what Gifty says, you don't need to cite that. And you do not, if it's stuff from this text, you don't have to do a works cited page or anything like that. You just, because we all know that you're writing about this text, and you don't need to bring in outside sources. So pretty much, if you just say, according to the book Transcendent Kingdom once, and then refer to it as the book after that, you're good. It's pretty informal. This is not a research paper. It's more of a reactionary self-discovery type paper. So a review type paper. And so we know what book you're referring to, as long as you mention it at once in the beginning. Anybody else?
Questions?
Oh, yeah, you do not need a works cited page, Lejeune.
Any other questions we can help you with? If you happen to think of something, I put both of our email addresses in the chat there.
You do not have to use page numbers if you use quotes from the book. No. Sorry, I interrupted you.
You're fine. I'm just waiting for more questions to come into the chat. So, but if after you get off the call and you do have more questions, feel free to email me, or you can reach out to Dr. Lance as well. And by the way, we do have a writing studio on campus. So if you would like someone to kind of look over your paper or help with formatting, please feel free to reach out to the writing studio. Our Tesswell Learning Center, that's the Honors College tutoring, will be available as well starting August 21st. The paper is due August 25th. So feel free to reach out to those resources as well. And with that, we'll go ahead and close out today's session. So thank you all for attending. Please reach out if you have any questions, and we are looking forward to a great year. Thanks for joining, everybody. Take care.
It was great meeting you.